Hello and welcome to another Helm's Deep beta preview with me, Balthelion. Today we're going to be discussing the Burglar class and the various changes that are going to come to that with the skill changes and the trait trees. So first off, I think we'll talk about what's been removed, and if you're worrying about, oh my god, all my skills are going to be gone, they're being removed, you shouldn't be, because this is a very short list and you'll realise that most of the skills that have been removed have just been shifted around a bit. So the first thing that has been removed from the Burglars is the free stance skills. So if we just go over those, first off you've got Mischief Stance. Now that gave you a Riddle cooldown bonus to take your Riddle down from 1 minute to 30 seconds. Now that bonus is actually provided in the Mischief Maker spec tree, so you can still get that if you trait Mischief Maker, so that's fine. And the second bonus that stance gave us was Trick Power Cost being reduced. And Trick Power Costs, and indeed many other Burglar power costs, have been adjusted, so we're covered there. So technically we've lost nothing by losing Mischief Stance. Second stance, Quiet Knife. That gave us extra damage and extra positional damage. Now both of those are being provided by traits in the QK tree, so we're covered on that again, so we've not really lost anything. And the other thing that gave us was a Threat Down modifier, and that's gone completely due to the threat system changes, which is not really a huge loss. Given how the new threat system works, it's a bit complicated, but I might cover that in a video discussing threat at some point. And then the last stance is the Gambler stance, and that gave us a evade bonus, which is covered in the Gambler tree, at the first tier of stuff, so we're fine on that. And a gamble damage bonus as well, and again that is covered in the trait tree for the Gambler, so we've lost nothing there, so that's fine. And there's also a trick removal debuff, but that's no longer provided at all, so we have lost a little bit of something there. Next thing we've lost is Confound and Well Placed Strike. Those skills have gone completely and they're not provided by anything now, but I think very few people were using those because they were not really worth it, basically, because Confound's little intro timer was a bit too long and didn't really justify the effect it caused. Well Placed Strike, even if you did it in position and got a crit and stuff, you know, it's taking too much time to execute. It wasn't really worth it unless you had the Dragok armor set back in Rise of Isengard. So that skill's gone completely. Next up we've got Escape Clause. That skill's been removed, and that allows you to reset some stuff, some various skills. So you might be concerned about that, but there's quite some sweeping changes to Ready Enable, which we'll cover later in this video, which will accommodate that, so you don't really need Escape Clause anymore. So that's not too bad at all. Next up, Burglar's Advantage is gone from the crit chain. So the crit chain now just consists of Double-Edged Strike and then the finishes, Flashing Blades and Exposed Throat. So initially you might be thinking, oh my god, you know, my crit chain has been shortened, that's going to affect my damage and stuff. But it's not too much, because the cooldowns of those chain finishes, Flashing Blades, Exposed Throat, have been reduced to 5 seconds, so you've still got those in rotation a lot more. You can execute those faster. Your DPS rotation's still going to be pretty fluid, so that's no loss there. And the last thing that's been removed is Location is Everything, and that's kind of been removed. The skill is gone, but there is a trait in the QK tree called Location is Everything, but that provides a different effect now. So instead of giving you an extra 25% positional damage while you're in stealth, that will be now a tier 5 bonus in the QK tree with the same name, but that will cause your crit chain skills to bypass 10% of the target's mitigations. So again, we'll be covering that later, but that's still a pretty nice buff. And that's all that's been removed. So I think next up we're going to talk about the general skills. Okay, so here we are then, and on my skill bars you're going to see my general skills. Now these are the skills that you will have regardless of your specialisation. They're your core skills. You will slowly acquire these as you level up, and I think most, if not all of these, will now be automatically granted to you, so I don't think you need to visit the trainers anymore. You might do in a couple of cases, I'm not too sure about that. So most of these you should be instantly familiar with, and we're just going to go over each of these and discuss the various changes going from live. So these might not necessarily be in the same order as my notes, but we'll start with Surprise Strike. Now, one of the most important things you're going to notice about Burglars is literally every skill has been made fast, except the ones that were already immediate. So Burglar skill rotation is now a lot more fluid, it's a lot faster, and it's a lot more fun as well. So you can go pretty crazy on the DPS. But Surprise Strike is pretty much the same as it always was, but it's now a fast skill, as you can see on that. Second, we have Cunning Attack, and again that's pretty much going to be the same. That's now been made into a fast skill, but it has the same effects. I should probably also say as well, take the damage numbers with a pinch of salt, because that's subject to change before launch, and this is obviously based on my gear as well. Next up we have Subtle Stab, which has a bit more changes going for it. It is a fast skill now, but on live it will reduce your trick removal skills by 3 seconds off the top of my head. But now it will have a bonus effect if you're traded in the Mischief Maker line, which will reduce your trick removal cooldowns by 2 seconds. So that is slightly lower than it does on live, but your trick removal skills have a much shorter cooldown, which you'll see when we get onto the Mischief Maker tree. So that's not too bad at all. But for Gambler and QK, that will just be as is, just straight up damage with no extra effect. Next up we have Provoke. If I can get the tooltip, there we go. So this now provides a debuff rather than a threat modifier. Because the threat changes, pretty much all skills that add threat or remove threat have been, well, that's a bit of a lie, but certainly things that can affect other people's threat have been changed. So Provoke will no longer do an aggro dump on whoever's got the aggro at the moment. Instead it will reduce the critical chance of your target by 2% for 15 seconds. And obviously this skill's on 5-second cooldown, so you could apply it to multiple targets. And it's just an extra little debuff in the Burglar's arsenal. Next up, we have Double-Edged Strike. Now, as I said earlier, Burglar's Advantage has been removed, although technically it's been repurposed and it's a slightly different skill in the Gambler line, but we'll cover that later. So Double-Edged Strike is now the first skill that opens when you score a critical hit, and that will start your crit chain. So as on live, it's pretty much the same. It's going to do 2 attacks doing quite a bit of damage, and that will open your crit chain from a crit or a devastate, as it always has done. Next up on my skill bars we have Exploit Opening. So as always, that's going to start a 5-second stun and a Fellowship Maneuver. Now the big change with this one is that previously it was on a 5-minute cooldown, and that has now been reduced to 2 minutes, so you can start spamming those CJs. Unfortunately they haven't revamped Fellowship Maneuvers, so they're still a bit naff in all honesty, but it's still useful for the extra stuns for when you need them. And if you want to do those conjunctions, you can now do them faster. That's kind of a bit of a trade-off, because as you'll see, the CJ skills have been spread around the trees a bit. So Exploit Opening is the only one that is a general skill that's available to all specs. We do still have marbles, so as you see on my skill bars, I've just put these here just to show off that these are still in the game, so you can still do those. And all the various other crafted burglary stuff. So we've got the throwing axes. I do believe we've still got the serrated knives. I should have some in my bags if those are still around. So we've still got these consumables as well. But Expert Opening is the only one that's available to every burglar. And obviously that's been changed to a fast skill as well. Next up we've got Riddle, which technically I should probably unslot my gear before I show this one, because otherwise it's going to give you false expectations. Just remove something off there, because I do have 2 pieces of the Erebor set. Let's just take that off. There we go. So Riddle's going to go back to its default state. So it's still single target Riddle. It's technically 20 meter range. It's just because I've got a legacy which improves it by 1 at the moment. So the Riddle is on a 1 minute cooldown, just like it always used to be. But you can get that down to 30 seconds if you're traded in the Mischief Maker tree, which again we'll cover a bit later. And Riddle, like all the other skills, is now a fast skill. Next up we've got Addle. Again, that's pretty much the same. I do have a induction multiplier legacy on me, so that's what that 68.875% is on the skill inductions. That should start off at 25%, I believe, by default. Let's just check my bags. That's not the tool I've got equipped. Yes, it should start at 25%, but it's just because I've got the legacy, it's gone up to 68%. Still does its minus 10% tactical damage for 30 seconds, same as it always has done. And Addle's on a 10-second cooldown, and it still remains an immediate skill. But the good thing is, with all the changes to make all the other skills fast, you basically don't need to Addle to cut short any of your animations anymore, which is great, because it means you can actually use it to interrupt things, and use it as the debuff, and just be a bit more useful with it, rather than using it out of necessity just to cut short those long animations. Next up we have Find Footing, which we have on here. So that will restore 25% of your max morale and give you 50% evade chance for 30 seconds, same as live. That's on a 5-minute cooldown. Has that gone down? No, that's the same as live, so pretty much as you'd expect there, but it is also a fast skill. So if you're dying before you can manage to click that, you shouldn't have that problem anymore. Touch and Go is 50% evade chance for 30 seconds. That's the same as it's always been. Again, it's been... Oh, it's an immediate skill. Maybe it is immediate on... I think it is immediate on live as well, so no change to this one. Next up we've got Ready Enable, and as I mentioned earlier, there's some changes to this to account for the fact that you don't have escape clause to reset your skills anymore. So Ready Enable on live had a 30-minute cooldown, so if you pop that, you're kind of waiting for ages and you can't reset anything anytime soon. But in Helm's Deep, that's been reduced from 30 minutes down to 5 minutes, which is a lot better, and you can use that obviously more often to reset all your various other skills. Next up we have Hips, which again could be under the effects of a legacy, so let me just check. It's not on there. Okay, it's not on under the effects of that, so that's cool. So Hips is an immediate skill, and pretty much the same as live. You're going to be undetectable in stealth for 10 seconds. You're going to have no slows, you'll be running at 100% speed. So it's no longer possible in Helm's Deep, to my knowledge, to get over 100% run speed via trading. So that shouldn't be able to cause bugs by reducing your run speed when you use Hips. But that's on a 7-minute cooldown, and that should be pretty much the same as live if I'm not mistaken. Okay, next up we have good old Sneak. What's changed with Sneak? Well, first up, Burglar's movement speed is being reduced by 40%, whereas on live it's reduced by 50% if you're using Sneak. So immediately there we've got 10% run speed bonus by default. Now that's going to get modified by our trait lines, but we'll come back to that later. And you've got free stealth detection, which is exactly the same as live, and it's still on a 10-second cooldown. And it is fast on live, I believe, as well. If not, it's fast now. Next up, Diversion. Again, that's a fast skill. It's normal on live. 10-second duration, 20-second cooldown. So same as you used to. Next up is Burglar's Antidote. Now, one of the big changes in Helm's Deep is that any skills which removed a particular status effect, so in Burglar's case we were able to remove poisons but none of the other status effects, every class that's got one of these, it basically does every type of status effect now, in slightly different ways. So Burglar's Antidote, we can remove 1 disease, wound, fear or poison with maximum strength of 90 from the target. So it's not necessarily us, it could be anyone, and that's on a 15-second cooldown, whereas before it was a 1-minute cooldown. And this has a 1-second induction, and I believe it's a 0.5-second induction on live. So that's a longer induction time, but you get more from it, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's only half a second. Next skill is Reveal Weakness. Now this has changed from live, and it's perhaps one of the slightly more controversial ones. The incoming damage buff has been halved. It is 8% by default on live, and it's only 4% in Helm's Deep. Now, Reveal Weakness is modified by all 3 of the trait lines, which we'll come to later, but it's not modified to have incoming damage. Actually, it does in Mischief Maker tree. It gets a slight bonus. But you're not going to get your 10% incoming damage anymore by trading for it. And they also do not stack with the same type of Reveal Weakness, but we'll come on to that later. So that's going to be doing a bit less. But to be honest, with the amount of damage output that you and everyone else will be putting out once you get your shiny new DPS skills in Helm's Deep, that's not going to be a huge issue. Next up, Practical Joke. Not really useful in combat, it's just a fluff skill. That's had its speed increased to fast, and everything else on that should be the same. And we have Safe Fall to avoid our falling injuries, and again that's exactly the same as live, 1-minute cooldown. It might now be fast rather than normal, I'm not entirely sure about that. I think it probably was fast on live. Then there's Share the Fun. So like Sneak, the movement modified speed has been buffed a bit. So on live you have minus 70% run speed, but on Helm's Deep you will have minus 60% run speed. So you and your friend are going to be moving a bit faster, and you only have -2 stealth level penalty. Everything else about this is still exactly the same as on live. Now the next one is a brand new skill, which at the minute it's called Purge Corruption. I'm not sure if that's finalised, but that's going to do a fair bit of damage, and it will remove 1 corruption effect from the target. And that's on a 15-second cooldown. It's a melee skill, so it's 3.5 meters range, it's not a range one. And that's basically because burglars would normally remove corruptions with Startling Twist, which is in the Mischief Maker tree. So to make sure that everyone can still have a corruption removal skill, we're going to get one of those by default. But if you get the Startling Twist skill in the Mischief Maker tree, you will be able to remove more corruptions if you so desire. So it just gives you more options. Next up, we have Burglar. Again, this is now been upgraded to a fast skill, but otherwise it is exactly the same as live, same range cooldown. Track Treasure is the next one. That's 10-second cooldown, same as live. Nothing's changed there apart from the fact it's now been made into a fast skill. And then lastly there is Contact Peddler. Now this one is definitely not finalised, because I pointed out to Rock, the Burglar's developer, that this skill still has a 30-minute cooldown, which is excessively long. So that's probably going to get reduced, and I would probably expect it to be perhaps a 5-minute duration, 5-minute cooldown, or something on a similar lines as that, before that hits live. So expect that to change, so you can sell all your rubbish every time you go near a campsite. So those are all the skills that you're going to have regardless of how you trait. So next up we're going to go through each of the trait trees and see the various traits and set bonuses we can get. Okay, so first thing then, we need to choose our specialisation. So I'm going to use the Gandalf button, and we can see our 3 specs here. Now, if you're unfamiliar with trait trees, I have done a video discussing trait trees, how they work and that. So I'm not going to be covering the basics in this video, but you can check that out if you need to learn how these work before we discuss it. But first off, let's start with Quiet Knife, because that will be the one most familiar to most burglars. So when we trait for that, we immediately get +2 stealth level, and we get plus 40% stealth movement speed, which will take us up to 100% apparently, which would be quite nice. And immediately we're going to get 2 new skills out of that. We'll get Knives Out, which is exactly the same as live, apart from the cooldown. Cooldown's been reduced from 5 minutes to 2 minutes. Possibly slightly lower incoming melee damage. I'm not sure if that's 30% on live. But anyway, yeah, so let's specialise in that. Spec 2. And you can see those 2 skills will now come on our skill bars. So, Feint Attack is going to be exactly the same as live. But the first thing you're going to notice is that you no longer need the cooldown legacy to get that cooldown on this skill to 15 seconds. That's been reduced to 15 seconds by default. So more points for your allies to spend on nice shiny stuff. So okay, first off we need to buy some stuff in here. So we have Agile Hands, which will increase our critical magnitude. So there's 5 ranks of that, going up to 5% skills critical multiplier. So that will just increase the damage that our critical hits will do. We have Footpad, which will increase our stealth level. So again, it's 1 stealth level per rank, and that goes up to 5. So we can do that. I will cover the bonuses that are going to light up here once I've got to the bottom of the tree. So I'm just going to ignore those for now. First up is going to be a brand new skill called Stun Dust. And that's going to work pretty much like the consumable Stun Dusts. I'm not sure if the consumable is still in the game or not. It may have been removed. But I have none of that in my bags to confirm or deny that. So using that, it's got a 1 minute cooldown. And it will cause a 5-second stun. So you can use that on a target, then go behind him and knife him in the butt. Which burglars love to do. And that will give us a new skill on the skill bar. I'll accept that just so we can show it there. There we go. What else have we got? We have Strike from Shadows. So that will give you up to 5% critical chance from stealth. So that's going to be familiar as pretty much one of the traits from live in the QK tree. So we can upgrade that, and that ding sound just means we've lit up a new thing on the side there. We have Death Strikes, which increases our critical chance. So we get up to 5% extra melee crit chance, which again, very nice to have. We have Hidden Dagger, which will allow us to deal more damage from stealth. So that's basically pretty much the same as Location is Everything, although that's technically over here, but it does something else now. So we can do extra damage from stealth. Dance of Blades increases the damage of your critical chain attacks, so we get up to 10% more critical response skill damage, so even more damage. Aim is pretty much as you remember it, but the cooldown on this is probably different to live. I'm curious about 1 minute 20 seconds. I might have something modifying that on a legacy maybe. No, I don't. It's 120 by default, fair enough. But 10 seconds on the duration for that buff, and you'll be familiar with using that from live. Next up we have Backstab, which gives us up to 25% positional damage, 5% per rank. So like I said, that's pretty much covers the Quiet Knife stance, and it's even got the same icon, so be pretty easy to pick that out. Next up we've got Vital Points, which means critical response skills have a chance to lower your target's critical defense. So we get a proc on every critical chain skill. There is a 15% chance to reduce the target's critical defense by 5% for 8 seconds. And if we get that up to rank 3, that will go up to a proc chance of 45% on a crit skill use. So 15% per rank on that, so that's quite nice. Flashing Blades, which you'll be more than familiar with, but now has no really long animation. It does still play the animation, however you no longer need Addle to cut it short, because pretty much everything is now a fast skill, so you can just chain anything after this skill now, unless you really want to sit there and just go shing 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 shing. So this is now a fast skill as well, like all the other skills. Still does 2 attacks, and you need to be dual wielding to be able to use that. Over here we have Well Practiced. The skills Aim and the Find Footing have reduced cooldowns, so obviously that's going 3 seconds per rank for aim cooldown, 20 seconds per rank for Find Footing cooldown, so that's pretty nice for getting those skills off quicker. Improved Hide in Plain Sight. The skill Hide in Plain Sight has a reduced cooldown, so we can take that down by 3 minutes at max rank. So if we buy all of that, that's going to mean this will go down to 4 minutes. Well, you won't see it there because I haven't applied the changes yet. So hips on 4 minutes, quite nice. Next up is Trip. So as I mentioned earlier, the CJ skills are being spread around a bit. So the QK will get the Trip skill, just because you're a sneaky bugger who likes using stealth. So again, that's now been upgraded to a fast skill. Still does some damage, still starts a Fellowship Maneuver. But as with Exploit Opening, the cooldown on this has been reduced from 5 minutes down to 2 minutes. So you can use it more often. And you can still obviously chain this after Feint Attack, or you can chain it after the brand new skill which we've got here, which is a lot of fun. I'll be showing the animation of this in a bit. I love it. Which is Coup de Grace, if I pronounced that correctly. Which is a powerful triple attack that boosts critical damage and marks the target. If the target is defeated while marked, you will temporarily enter stealth. So this does 3 huge attacks, and if they crit or devastate, they do tons of damage, which is awesome. But if the target of Coup de Grace is killed while marked, the Burglar will enter stealth. So you do a nice finishing blow on one target, you drop in stealth, and then you can do your stealthy business. So entering stealth for a short time, being attacked will not break you out of stealth, so you don't have to worry about that. It's a bit like hips on that. However, I believe it works slightly different to hips. I believe it might not reset any aggro of other stuff on you for reasons that may bug instances and stuff. I'm not sure if that's been resolved now and whether it will drop aggro. To take that with a pinch of salt. But basically it allows you to do a really powerful finishing move on a mob to kill one of them off, and then you're able to use your various from stealth skills after that to do some stuff. But this has a 1 minute cooldown. Now the intention behind this skill is that it's basically used as a finisher rather than a rotational skill. It's more about the finishing a mob off and then using that special ability that gets you in stealth rather than just doing tons of damage as part of your rotation. So it's best off used as an execution ability basically. So I will apply all those. Now that's going to put all those skills on my skill bars, and it's also going to invoke all of these changes down the side here. So let's cover the set bonuses. So if you if you purchase 5 ranks, which is not necessarily 5 spent skill points, but see the tree video I've made for a bit more explanation on that. Purchase 5 ranks in any of the 3 trees, and you'll get Improved Knives Out, which reduces the cooldown by 45 seconds. So that's quite nice there. Second one, if you spend 10 ranks in any tree, increases the critical and devastating critical damage of all of your skills. So more crit damage for everything. Sweet. Can't argue with that. Plus 10%. If you spend 15 ranks, you'll get the improved reveal weakness for the QK line. Now, the 3rd tier bonus of all 3 trait lines is the reveal weakness buff. And in the QK one, it will give you minus random number reveal weakness critical defense debuff. So basically, It reduces the target's critical defense, which means you can crit them more, which is always nice. Now, the changes to reveal weakness mean that you cannot stack reveal weakness like you could on live, so no more crazy burglars just all piling their reveal weakness on a mob and battering stuff. However, if I'm not mistaken, you can stack each unique type of reveal weakness once. Maybe slightly wrong on that, but I think that's the main reason why the incoming damage portion of these skills has been reduced. So I think in theory you could have a Gambler one, a Quiet Knife one and a Mischief Maker one, each applied to a target, but that's it. You can't stack two QK ones on the same target because it either won't let you or it will override the first person's. I'm not entirely sure about that. So it's a bit like Captain Marks, how they work on live at the moment. The fourth set bonus, if you spend 20 ranks, is Relish Battle. Your critical hits have a chance of granting a heal over time. On every melee skill, 25% chance on critical hit to heal, and bear in mind this can be affected by stuff as well, but for me at the minute it is 797 morale initially and 69 morale every 3 seconds for 12 seconds. So it's quite a bit, but on beta we've been feeling that it hasn't procced maybe as much as it should be, that it's maybe proccing a bit less than 25%. So this might be slightly tweaked, maybe the numbers might get buffed a bit. But it basically means if you're in the thick of battle, if you're critting things, you will heal yourself. So if you're taking maybe a bit of AoE damage in a boss fight, you can be a bit more self-sufficient by healing yourself and reducing the burden on the healers. So that's quite nice. If you spend 25 points in your trait trees, you will get the new location is everything. Although it's the same name as the skill on live, forget that. It's completely different now. So striking at the weak links in your opponent's armour allows your critical chain attacks to bypass their defences. Critical chain skills bypass 10% of your target's mitigations. So that's obviously going to allow you to do more damage to a target because you can bypass their mitigations more, so that's always welcome. Particularly on something maybe like a raid boss that's got high mitigations. And presumably that's going to be quite strong in PvMP as well. If you spend 30 ranks in any of your trait trees, you will get Practice Bluff. Your ability to bluff and attack through has been well practiced. Feint Attack becomes Improved Feint Attack and now activates more stealth skills. Your damage from stealth attacks, including Improved Feint, is also increased. So you will get plus 5% damage from stealth. And that's obviously always nice. Now, if I go back over here to Improved Feint Attack, we're going to see it's going to give you a 10-second buff of plus 25% melee damage. Now that's been slightly lowered from live, where it was plus 30% melee damage for that 10 seconds. But bear in mind, Improved Feint Attack now is on a 5-second cooldown with a 10-second buff, so you can keep that up permanently, providing you chain your skills together quite nice. To make sure that buff's always up, and then only consume it when you can apply it again. So yeah, that's going to make you deal tons of damage, which is obviously quite nice. And then the last skill, if you spend 35 points in your tree, which is perhaps slightly underwhelming as the 7th tier one, but it's Improved Sneak. So when using Surprise Strike or Cunning Attack from Sneak, they are now guaranteed to be critical hits. And it does come with a little note there, which says this does not affect Feint Attack or Improved Feint Attack. So that's not going to help you in your rotation, it's only going to help you on your opening moves. Or if you're in proper stealth, basically, rather than fake stealth caused by Improved Feint Attack or Coup de Grace. So that's the Quiet Knife tree. So next up, the Gambler. Okay, so I've said to respecialise now, and we're going to pick the Gambler. So we can see the immediate bonuses we're going to get for trading it will be our crit chain now unlocks on Invades, which is basically the stick and move legendary skill from live. And like QK, we will be getting a 40% stealth movement speed buff to our basic movement speed. And we're going to get 2 new skills straight away once we spec in this tree. So the first is Lucky Strike, which you're going to be familiar with from live. So again, with all melee skills, or all burglar skills I should say, this is now a fast skill. same effect as on live, and again, you'll no longer need the legacy cooldown reduction, because this is now 15 seconds by default, which is very nice. And you're going to get one of your new skills, which is Hedge Your Bet, which I'll just spec before I show that off. So let's bring up the tooltip for this. Hedge Your Bet. Again, it's going to be a fast skill, 2.5 range, same as normal. A quick attack that increases the potency of an existing gamble. Increases the tier of an existing gamble, and I believe it goes up by 1 tier, and refreshes the duration as well. So you can use this to constantly prop up a particular, perhaps the debuffing gamble, because you don't want to overwrite that with a damaging gamble. So you can use that to constantly keep it up. And since the debuffing gamble is pretty much the strongest debuff in the game, that's pretty sweet straight away. So okay then, let's start spending some points. So first up, we're going to have Leafwalker. Now again, like Footpad over here, it's going to do stealth level, going up to 5 stealth level at rank 5. So potentially you could get both of these in the tree, whichever one you're in you can spec to the other one outside of your tree and get even more stealth level. So no more will things detect you in stealth, because plus 10 is pretty hefty. Then we've got Stick and Move, which boosts our evade chance, so we'll get up to an extra 5% evade, which is very nice. Even more so when you start seeing what we're going to get off evades later on. Honed Wit increases the damage of damage over time effects, so all your bleeds, plus 25% burglar bleed damage at rank 5, which is very nice. So something you'll notice, there'll be quite a hefty bleed focus on the gambler tree, so anything that increases your bleed damage is going to be quite nice. Next up we have another new skill, which is Gambler's Advantage. Now this is basically Burglar's Advantage, which got removed. It's been repurposed into this. So a critical hit enables the burglar to strike, applying a stacking bleed to the target. Deals extra damage when attacking from behind. Now notice it does say stacking bleed, so even more bleed DPS. And if you crit now, you'll open both Gambler's Advantage and Double-Edged Strike. They will both be tier 1 train skills, and using either of those will then enable you to use one of your finishers. So obviously that's quite nice. Nice bit of front and up damage as well as the bleed. So we'll purchase that. I'll just click apply so that goes on the bars. Even though they're greyed out, still a bit of a bug on beta that means skills are a bit greyed out sometimes, but just ignore that. Next up we have Swift and Subtle. Improves the heal over time from Bob and Weave. Where is that in my tree? Is that number 4? That's not. No. Bob and Weave's over here, so I'll break my usual format. We'll discuss this one first. So spending 5 ranks in any of your trees gives you Bob and Weave, which grants a heal over time when you evade an attack. Evading an attack applies a heal over time to the burglar. This effect can only trigger once per second. So again, that seems to have changed, because it was temporarily once per 2 seconds. But this will heal for 558 morale initially, and 86 morale every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So obviously, unlike the QK one, which you can do at any time, this one will only proc if you're taking damage. So if the tank is tanking things, you're probably not going to see this go too much, but for soloing, this is ridiculously strong. So don't be surprised if this gets slightly nerfed. And hopefully I'll be able to show you how strong this is if Cramp comes nearby soonish. But yeah, back into the main tree. Swift and Subtle will increase the healing from Bob and Weave, so that will buff that up by 50%. If I apply that, then yeah, 831 morale and 129 heal over time. That's strong, ridiculously strong. Next up we have Cruel Odds, which increases the chance of applying a gamble. So again, that's another thing that was off of legendary items, which has now been moved into the traits to make things a bit easier. I'm not sure if there is a gamble chance legacy on there still. I need to research that. Then we have Roll the Dice, which increases physical mastery. So a bit of the issues maybe with gamblers on live is that they tend to be a little bit less straight up DPS than the Quiet Knife, so this trait can help you bridge the gap a bit in the upfront damage department. Next up we have Aggravated Bleeds, which increases the duration of damage over time dealt by Gambler's Advantage and Cunning Attack, so we can get up to 2 extra pulses on our bleeds there, so that's obviously very nice. Next up is Double Down, which means the skills Provoke and Diversion have a chance to apply a gamble. Provoke's chance is increased when applied from stealth. So Provoke can still apply your debuff, disabling gamble. Out of combat, it is, I think it's 45% chance to apply it normally. If I drop into stealth, that should hopefully change. In stealth, you have an 80% chance of applying the disabling gamble. But if you're not in stealth, 45%. So there is a slight penalty, and it's not guaranteed, but you can still get that going pretty easily, since it's only on 5-second cooldown. Even the odds. The skill Double-Edged Strike may grant you a random buff when used on a target with an active gamble. So you can get plus 100% chance of that occurring. So basically every time now I use Double-Edged Strike, I'm going to get a buff, which is pretty sweet, because obviously Double-Edged Strike I can use every 5 seconds, so that's going to buff me and make me even stronger. High Roller. Increase the damage of the following skills: Lucky Strike, Gambler's Strike, Hedge Bet, Blind Bet, Gambler's Advantage, Cash Out. So we get up to 20% gamble applying skill damage. So any skill that applies a gamble will do up to 20% more damage. So again, that's pretty nice. So let's buy those. Exposed Throat, same as live. Apart from the fact it's been reduced to 5 seconds rather than 10 seconds, and it's now a fast skill. But it's still a 20% chance to apply a stun and start a Fellowship Maneuver. So obviously gamblers being chance based, it made sense for the Exposed Throat to be in this particular tree. But otherwise that's exactly the same as live there. Then we have a Sure Thing, which increases the damage done by harmful gambles. So we can have up to 15% more harmful gamble damage. So things like your bleeds, that's going to do even more damage, make them even stronger. And the capstone for the Burglar in the Gambler stance, or Gambler tree I should say, is All In, and this is quite fun. So you briefly boost your damage, evade chance and finesse rating to try and finish a fight, but beware if the enemy survives. So basically for 15 seconds you're going to have 50% extra attack speed, 50% extra melee damage, 20% evade chance, and a scaling bit of finesse rating in there as well. So you suddenly go pretty mental for 15 seconds. Now if you kill your target, great, it's dead, and the penalty that could occur is removed. So you go all in, you kill stuff, you win. If you don't kill it in that 15 seconds, you will get the opposite effect, which debuffs you for a following 15 seconds afterwards. So if you don't kill your target, you will have 50% less attack speed, 50% less melee damage, 20% less evade chance, and a negative finesse rating for 15 seconds after it times out. So basically it's risk and reward. If you think you can kill it, you can go mad and kill it. If you get it wrong, you're in trouble. So like the other capstone, that is on a 1 minute cooldown, and that's pretty fun to play with. So let's cover the set bonuses again. So 5 points will get us the Bob and Weave, which we've covered previously. 10 points will get you Blind Bet, which means you make an additional attack after using Double-Edged Strike, inflicting moderate damage. A random gamble is applied to your target. After using Double-Edged Strike, make a quick attack to apply a random gamble. It's pretty much the same thing, and it has a debuffing gamble 80% chance to apply. I'm not sure if that's meant to be exclusively a debuffing gamble, or potentially a damaging gamble as well, but it's definitely not a disabling gamble. So that's a fast skill, 2.5 meter range, and a 15-second cooldown on that one. So again, that's another chance-based skill. A third one is going to be our reveal weakness buff, and in the gambler stance, that will reduce the finesse of a enemy mob. So that could be useful in a boss fight if the boss has got loads of finesse. But again, that can't stack with another gambler buff, but it should be able to stack with a QK and a Mischief Maker one. If you spend 20 points in your 20 ranks in your trees, you will get overwhelming odds. Completing a fellowship maneuver will empower the burglar based on what maneuver was completed. Basically, what icon you selected. So it's pretty much the same as one of the traits on live. Strength, the red one, will give you extra melee damage for a bit. Tactics will give you the minus 10% power cost. That's the blue one. Conviction is the green one, which will give you 10% gamble chance, and Guile, which is the yellow one, will give you plus 5 pulses for your next cunning attack and gambler's advantage. If you spend 25 ranks in your trees, you'll get dealings done. You know what to deal with the cards you are dealt. Lucky Strike becomes Gambler's Strike, which has a reduced cooldown, no longer requires Double-Edged Strike, and can now upgrade gambles to the max tier. Your chance of applying gambles is also increased. So we get passively 10% extra chance to apply all our gambles for many of our skills. And Lucky Strike becomes Gambler's Strike. So to cover that again, that means Gambler's Strike is now on a 5-second cooldown. If you score a devastating critical hit, you get plus 40% gamble chance for 30 seconds. Which is very nice, but I think that's potentially going to get changed to on a crit. Depending on feedback. So that could change. So it does that in addition to its normal effects. If you spend 30 points in your tree, you'll get another new skill called Cash Out. A quick attack that consumes an existing damaging or debuffing gamble to apply an effect based on type and tier. So it consumes a damaging gamble for instant damage, or you consume a debuffing gamble to give the burglar an evade rating buff. So again, you can choose what you want to cash out, what effect you want to get back from that. That's on a 20-second cooldown, and does a fair old bit of damage as well, but that's, as always, a fast skill and on 2.5 meter range. And the last skill, if you spend 35 ranks in any of your trees, you'll get loaded dice. You always play to win. So you get plus 20% even the odds proc potency, and you'll get 10 seconds cooldown off of blind bet and cash out. So you can start whipping around your skills even more, doing various cashing out to get extra damage and applying your debuffs, your gambles, a lot more efficiently. So yeah, that's it for the Gambler. Next up we have the Mischief Maker. Okay, so our last trait tree then, Mischief Maker. Now this is something that's been largely ignored on live because it's kind of way behind the other two trait lines in terms of potency. But this trait line's been buffed and it's going to be pretty fun now. So the bonuses we get for immediately traiting this, we'll get Subtle Stab, reduces the active cooldown of trick removals, and that's something I discussed earlier, so we'll see that in a bit. And we also earn 2 skills by default, so Mischievous Glee and Trick Disable, which are going to be same as live, but the cooldown is 45 seconds by default. That should change as we trait up. But basically, the only way you can get those 2 skills, if you're into your tricks and trick removals, is to be in the Mischief Maker line. All the other tricks and trick removal skills you could theoretically buy even if you're in QK or Gambler, but not those 2. So let's spec in that then, and that will grant us our skills there. So let's see, what do we got? So, low picking fruit, we have Trick Dust in the Eyes, which is pretty much the same as live. However, you will see max targets free. It's AoE by default, which is very nice. 6 meter range on that. 5-second cooldown, as usual. It applies the buff for 17 seconds, which might be slightly affected by one of my legacies. Let's just have a quick look. I have a 2 tricks duration, so that should be 15-second buff by default. So you'll notice that buff durations are shorter, but cooldown reductions on your buffs and trick removal skills are also in effect. So you'll be applying and removing these a lot faster. So we'll buy that. Then we have Practical Joke. Increases trick and trick removal skill damage. So again, another problem with Mischief Makers is that their damage was a bit rubbish. So this will help you bridge the gap with the other two more damage-based trait lines. So we can get up to 20% trick and trick removal damage if we buy 5 ranks in that. Then we have Heartening Prank. Increases max morale by up to 5%, which is not a huge amount, especially compared to some of the other max morale buffing traits in other classes. But, you know, it's free morale. Can't argue too much. It's useful to everyone. Startling Twist. So, rank 1, we will earn the skill Startling Twist. Now, the default version of this can remove up to 3 corruptions from the target. So, it's technically improved Startling Twist on live. But that will stun the target for 8 seconds, same as usual. And then it's got a 3.5 meter range. So, we buy that. Now, the second rank of this allows Startling Twist to affect multiple enemies. So this is basically Advanced Startling Twist, which is what you'll have by level 85. I think it's you get that somewhere in your 60s. So we can buy that. And I'll just do that to get it on my skill bars. Although I didn't purchase it, but there we are. Okay, so next up, Thick Skin. Increases physical and tactical mitigation. We can get both of those up by 5%. So another problem with Burglars is that they tended to be a bit squishy for the melee classes, particularly if you didn't focus on your defences or vitality. So this will help you get those up, particularly tactical mitigation, because that was always one that was lagging behind a bit for Burglars. So we can upgrade that. Then we have Counter Defence. Same as live, apart from the duration. It's now 15 seconds by default. Fast skill, same as always. I'm not entirely sure about the numbers, but I believe they have been reduced just looking at those. But yeah, the first rank will get us the skill, so we can purchase that. And the second rank will give us minus 2% critical hit chance on the skill. So let's buy that, put that on there. There we go. So your target has less chance to critically hit you, rather than you giving your fellowship increased chance to critically hit the mob. So that's kind of been reversed. So that one's slightly modified, that one. Next up, Perplexing Proposition. Trick removal skills can be used more often. So that's going to be a key trait in this line, because you can reduce your trick removal cooldowns by 25 seconds. Now bearing in mind these are 45 seconds by default, so that will get your trick removal skills down to 20-second cooldowns, each of them. Then we have Playful Mind. Increases the duration of your tricks by up to 9 seconds. So obviously that's something that was on your legendary items, but it's now brought in the traits a bit, so that makes life a bit easier. Trick Enrage causes the enemy to take more damage. It no longer makes the enemy enraged and runs around, so you can't troll the various pug groups and kin runs that you do anymore by just putting random aggro on a mob. So first point, we'll get the skill available for use, which by default has 2% incoming damage. That should be a 15-second buff by default, but I've buffed the trick duration on that via traits. And rank 2 will give us an extra 3%, so that will go up to 5% incoming damage on your target. So it's kind of a bit like counter defense on live. So the buffs have changed slightly. Complicated Terms increases the grace period of your crowd control effects. So this is basically the same as the traits on live that give you an extra 5 seconds on your Riddle. So we can up that. Apply that. So we'll see now, if we have a look at Riddle, we'll have a 35-second daze instead of a 30-second daze. Bearing in mind, as I said earlier, the Mischief Maker tree will reduce the cooldown on Riddle, but we'll cover that in a bit. Comedic timing, tricks and trick removal skills are harder to resist. So I believe that was a trait, or slightly different to one of the existing traits, or maybe even Mischief Stance itself. Can't remember off the top of my head. So we get 4% resistance penetration for our trick removal skills. Next up, self-adulation increases the potency of heals. Now, the interesting thing about the Mischief Maker Burglar is that it's suddenly become very good at healing. And not just healing yourself, but healing your fellowship. So you'll see why in a bit, but we can upgrade our healing ability by 20%, which is very nice. Clever Retort only has 1 rank in it. Take a chance when removing an active trick. Apply one of 4 effects to the enemy based on the trick removed. Now, I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but obviously if you apply a certain trick and then use Clever Retort, you can guarantee now whether you get the heal or the power restore or the damage over time. So that's pretty good, because sometimes you can get stuck in combat, you need your heal, you pop Clever Retort and you get a power restore and you just facepalm yourself because that's not what you wanted. But now you can guarantee what effects you get just by applying a trick first and then using Clever Retort, so that's pretty nice. Then we have Burglar's Antidote. Now, bearing in mind, we already have 1 poison removal, or status effect removal skill, I should say. So the skill Burglar's Antidote now applies to the Fellowship. So that is our skill over here. Let's drag that off to the side. So yeah, that just makes that Fellowship wide. So I buy that. But we should also have Cure Poison should be somewhere as well. So we technically have 2 of those skills, but I'm not sure where that's gone at the moment. Appraising Eye, the skill Reveal Weakness does more damage. So as I said, Reveal Weakness damage has been nerfed a bit. It's been halved from 8% to 4% by default. But this is the only trait which will buff it again, so you will have 6% Reveal Weakness damage by default. So again, still lower than live, but everyone's going to be putting out tons of damage anyway. Opportunist, the skill Subtle Stab does additional damage to targets with an active trick on them. Additional ranks increase the damage dealt. So basically, you put a trick on a mob, you use Subtle Stab on it, loads of damage. So you can have up to 40% damage off of this proc. So that's 40% of the proc damage, not of Subtle Stab's damage. So don't go getting too excited, but it's still a nice damage increase. And then the last skill here is Trickster. So you pop this and it's a buff on you that will last in combat until it's consumed. Or if you're out of combat for 9 seconds, it will be consumed anyway. But tricks will affect many enemies and different tricks can stack. Now, this is quite complicated to explain, but basically it means your next trick is AoE. It will affect up to 3 targets. Now, you can basically have one trick on multiple targets and multiple tricks on one target. So if you've already got a trick on a mob, and then you use Trickster and then do another trick, that trick will apply to 3 targets, and if they've got tricks on them already, they'll suddenly have 2 tricks on them. So you can have 2 debuffs on a mob at a time. But bearing in mind the Trickster skill is on a 45-second cooldown, so you can't keep that up permanently, but you can have 2 pretty awesome tricks on the target at the same time, which is something burglars have always wanted to be able to do. So that's pretty nice there. So now then, we can talk about the set bonuses on this. So spending 5 ranks in any tree will get you quite a snag, which will upgrade your small snag. So activated by Double-Edged Strike. That's not true. That this no longer requires the crit trait. This is now a completely independent skill. So ignore that description. But you use this skill, and it will apply a 30-second route to your target with a 30-second duration. So this is one skill that most burglars never got to use because it meant trading the Mischief Maker and getting the Mischief Maker capstone to use. But it basically means Mischief Maker now does even more CC than burglars are used to, so it's awesome. So you get the 30-second route on a 30-second cooldown instead of a 15-second route on a 5-minute cooldown. But you're also going to put a buff on the mob, or debuff, whatever you want to call it, which will cause them to take 3% more incoming damage, and they will have 10% less, or 10% more attack duration. And if you devastate crit that, you get an extra trick removal effect duration, which is quite interesting as well. So yeah, you get even more CC options on the Burglar there. Spend 10 points in anywhere in your trait tree, you'll get disabling attack. You are able to use your disable skill to greatly reduce your enemy's speed. So basically, disable is only granted in the Mischief Maker tree when you get to the 10 points spent, 10 ranks bought. But curiously, we've got improved disable in here as well, listed on that tooltip. But I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe it's because we've already upgraded it. Reveal weakness. In the Mischief Maker line, you will apply a resistance debuff to your target, so you can make them more susceptible to various status effects and whatnot. So that's alright, but again, it can't stack with itself. It should only be able to stack with a Quiet Knife and a Gambler Reveal weakness. Joke with legs. Increases the range of your trick skills by 5 meters. So our trick skills are now very large. We have long arms. Should be 8.5 meters. I'm not entirely sure why Dust in the Eyes is longer. It ranges up to 26. So yeah, we get extra range in our tricks, which is something else that's always quite nice to have. Just apply those from slightly further range. And also, this is the trait that's going to reduce your Riddle cooldowns from 1 minute to 30 seconds. So you have to spend 20 points in there to be able to do a permanent Riddle on your targets. But by that point, you should probably have the grace period on your Riddle as well, so that's quite nice. Spend 25 points. We get a trick for all tastes. Your trick removal buffs are now applied to your Fellowship. So Mischievous Glee, and its upgraded version, Mischievous Delight, and Clever Retort now apply their buffs to your Fellowship. Now this is why I said the Burglar's healing potential is quite strong. So if I just bring up Mischievous Delight, as it currently is, bearing in mind this is according to my gear and stuff, we can't actually see the Clever Retort effect for the heal, but obviously Mischievous Delight is on a 20-second cooldown. Subtle Stab can reduce that cooldown by 2 seconds if we use Subtle Stab every 3 seconds, so we can get that down pretty low and basically apply Mischievous Delight very often, and that will be doing pretty much 1000 morale, probably more by the time you get to level 95, with a slight heal over time. And you can heal your Fellowship, you can give them power as well, 510 mine is at the minute, with 85 power every 3 seconds for 18. So basically you can spam those skills, give your Fellowship morale, give your Fellowship power, and suddenly the Burglar is like a really strong healer. So it's going to be pretty fun using the Burglar to heal people in 3-mans, unless it's a really hard 3-man. So that's pretty fun. Now Clever Retort, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It's going to be less than Mischievous Delight if memory's correct. But still, it's very nice. You can do a nice bit of off healing there. If you spend 30 points in your tree, you get Little Annoyances. You know how to make those little things really distract people. Small Snag becomes Quite a Snag, which has increased range, increased duration, a more potent debuff, and no longer requires Double-Edged Strike to be used first. So maybe it was telling the truth when it said Double-Edged Strike needed to be used first. But then the upgraded version doesn't need it, or maybe this tooltip's wrong and it doesn't need it at all. I'm not entirely sure about that. But since the other skills are not gated behind the crit chain anymore, I would be tempted to say Snag is not gated behind the crit chain skills and the tooltips just need updating. So take this with a pinch of salt until it hits live. And the last skill, which you get if you spend 35 ranks in your trait trees, you get Confound the Fools. Your mastery of the trick is second to none, so you get 15 seconds off of Trickster cooldown. So that's 1 minute by default. That will go down to 45 seconds with this set bonus. Mischievous Glee becomes Mischievous Delight, so that's the one that applies the extra power effect on top of the hill. And there we go. Trick Disable becomes Improved Disable, so that's why we saw Improved Disable earlier. So we get that maxed out as well. So even more debuffing as well as the off healing. So yeah, overall, I quite like the Burglar changes. I can probably see myself running Mischief Maker in groups or raids, and since I have several burglars, I can do Quiet Knife and the Gambler. And all 3 trait lines are now viable. They are all strong in their own way. They're all pretty good. They're good fun to do. So I hope you've liked this Burglar cast change preview. It's probably gone on for the best part of an hour. But hopefully this will give you a nice insight into what the Burglar's like and allay any of your fears. So if you guys like that, keep an eye out on my channel for more Helm's Deep beta videos going on to launch. Hopefully I'm going to manage to get around to doing one for every class, as well as various other things about Helm's Deep. So keep an eye out for those, and thanks for watching. See you guys later.